we are starting a brand new series of messages. It's going to carry us through the month of November. And as I want to begin with some sensitivity in understanding that this will affect different ones of us in different ways. The series is titled, The Storm Before the Calm. The Storm Before the Calm. And the reason it'll affect us in different ways is many of us are in a storm of some sort or another, but the uniqueness of our storm is probably different than the person who's beside us. There's a lot of nuance about the types of storms that we face, and so I want to be conscious of that not all storms are created equal. How many people in the room, you would say you like a good storm? Okay, we're talking meteorologically, not metaphorically. You like a good storm. You like to see some rain. You like a little thunderclap every now and again. You see, some of us, we love a storm. Some of us kind of resist a storm. What I want to be conscious of is the fact that regardless of the type of storm you're in, I do believe that on the other side of your storm, there is some calm for you. And I think the saying has been improperly inverted. So often we say that it's just the calm before the storm. Not a super encouraging thing to say usually to somebody. It's like a woman who's 8 months pregnant. We come alongside, she's tired, and we're like, yeah, but just trust me. This is actually the calm. The storm is still coming. Thanks. Someone who's putting together plans for a business and they're kind of maxed out on every possible line of credit they can be, and they're getting ready and they're like, oh man, there's just a lot of details. And you go, no. Once you start, the details will get bigger. This is the calm before the storm. Maybe a couple with a small window of serenity as they've been planning their wedding, and right before the final plans have been put into process to celebrate that day, there's a little moment and you're telling them, well, this is the calm before the storm. A storm is on the way. It's not a super encouraging thing to tell someone. And most often I've kind of found it the other way around. When you're getting ready to do something big, when you're taking on a new challenge, there's actually some storm that you need to make your way through before you experience the calm. Would anyone else agree? And as that is the case, I just want to say that regardless of the type of storm you're in, and there are some different types we'll talk about, there is calm on the other side. It is the purpose of God that you would experience and live in peace. But we need to acknowledge not all storms are created equal. In Matthew chapter 5 and verse 45, Jesus is talking and he describes the nature of life in this way. Matthew 5:45. He said that you may be called the children of the Father in heaven, who causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Did you catch that? That the systems we face and the storms we might encounter are not an immediate indication of whether we're right or not. Some of us in this room, we have a propensity to believe as soon as a storm of any type arises, as soon as unsettling weather or uncertainty or chaos or hardship arises, our first assumption is, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to change? Well, you might need to acknowledge that storms come on both the righteous and the unrighteous. Others of us have a propensity to assume that as soon as things are going bad, we're like, we must be making a difference. And we almost are storm hunters. We're almost searching for the next chaotic moment to remind us that feeling that we're alive. Well, the Bible says this, that storms are not a necessary indication of right or wrong. We don't have enough information yet to know whether we are right or we're wrong. Look at the book of Nahum, if you could. Nahum chapter 1. I bet you haven't been to Nahum in a little bit. Nahum chapter 1 and verse 3. It says this of storms. Nahum 1 in verse 3. In my mind, I'm going Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum. Here we are. It says this, the Lord is slow to anger, but great in power. The Lord will not leave the guilty unpunished. Listen to this. His way is in the whirlwind and the storm, and the clouds are dust of his feet. How's that possible? We resist storms. We try to avoid storms. We do what we can to get away from storms. And here the Bible says that God's ways are in the storm, that there might be something of God's origin and God's doing in the storm. And yet in Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 27, wisdom is speaking. It's kind of a dark, humoristic take where wisdom is talking to us about the importance that we learn the principles of wisdom and we put them into practice. And wisdom being the speaker to those of us who are foolish, and I count myself at the top of that list. Wisdom says, Proverbs 1 and 27, that when calamity overtakes you like a storm and disaster sweeps over you like a whirlwind, and when disaster and trouble overwhelm you, I'll be laughing. Kind of a dark thought, wisdom. Wisdom, I've been trying to tell you, it's an avoidable storm. Like, I don't know what else I could do besides tell you. Have you ever been in a storm that you could have completely avoided? Really? Only 5 of us? Have you ever been in a storm completely avoidable? Not all storms are created equal. There are some storms that wisdom would prevent us from. The other day, my son Titus was at a cross-country run, a race. He's actually made the provincials 4 years in a row, and we had those provincials yesterday. But last week, as he was qualifying for provincials, he was at a race up in Squamish. It was muddy. It was stormy. There was all sorts of different terrains. And as these races go, it's a mass start and a gun fires and they all begin to run. You can feel the ground kind of shake. And somewhere in front of them is someone on a mountain bike who's running and indicating this is the way to go through the trails. And so you follow kind of the person in front of you and you try to overtake them along the way. Well, in the course of events, because there was so much mud in these trails, there was a few spots that had been partitioned off. Like, don't go this way because there's hazards there. And so this one particular spot was kind of chained off. It was like just run around this spot. And so every person who came to that spot navigated around it to make their way. And one young man who's not Titus, I just want to be clear that I'm not throwing any shade at him, he thought that he would save the extra 1 second that going around the chain would cause by hurtling over it and missing the hazard that was on the other side. Well, he caught his foot on the chain, he smacked on the ground face first and kind of got himself up, shaked off, dusted off, and people began to clap for him like, way to go, you've overcome such an obstacle. No, he put himself there. There's some storms that are of our own making. And we don't necessarily need compassion in those storms. It's interesting, there's a lot of people who will give us absolutely no compassion when we're in a storm because they have believed we all get what we deserve. Some of us desire no compassion when we're in a storm because we believe I'm just getting what I deserve. And then there are those who give maybe an overwhelming amount of compassion that's not actually good for us. We're like, wow, you're just doing such a good job. No, I caused this. It is my fault. I should have listened to wisdom. You're feeling bad for me, but wisdom is laughing at me. Storms are nuanced. We need to be conscious that if we're facing storms, we can't just make quick assumptions. That means we're good or that means we're bad. There's more going on to this. Because in the book of Isaiah 25:4, it says that God is our shelter in the middle of the storm. And then just a few pages later in Isaiah 29:6, it says that God moves within the storm. How is it possible that God is helping keep us out of the storm while he's moving within the storm? Well, here's how it's possible. There's different types of storms. We need wisdom and discernment to know which type of storm we're facing. In fact, maybe this is best put in the book of Proverbs chapter 107. Psalms, I should say, Psalm 107 and verse 25. If you could turn there with me, Psalm 107, verse 25. Down to verse 29, in describing the way God moves in and around storms. Psalm 107 and verse 25 says this. Listen to the plight that is described. It says this, for he spoke and he stirred up the tempest, and it lifted high the waves. What caused the tempest and the waves to rise? God spoke. So God spoke and caused a storm. He caused calamity. Then verse 26 says this, they mounted up to the heavens, they went down into the depths. In their peril, their courage melted away. They reeled and they staggered like drunkards. They were at their wits' end. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he brought them out of that disaster, and he stilled the storm to a whisper, and the waves of the sea were hushed. God's voice rises the storm. God's voice calms the storm. There's some nuance here that we need to determine. And so through the month of November, we're going to look at different types of storm narratives and ask ourselves, is there something we can learn from these storms? If you're taking notes today, the message is entitled, A Weather Warning is in Effect. A weather warning is in effect. Weather warnings are kind of funny, aren't they? They're so subjective. They're so subjective to the region you're from. Like if you get a cold weather warning in Southern California, it's like, ooh, might need a light jacket. This could be a problem. If you live in different parts of Canada, there's no such thing as a snow day. We see the slightest indication of frost, we're like, we should all stay home. Maybe for 3 to 4 days, just for safety. It's nuanced. There are some places where it might be raining sideways, and they say meteorologically there are times where animals are actually picked up in rain clouds and dropped down. So raining cats and dogs is a thing. And they're like, yeah, this is just Tuesday. This is pretty normal. We're used to this. Just take an umbrella. Weather is kind of subjective to what we're used to, but there is a weather warning in effect. And we're pretty obsessed with the weather, aren't we? We have apps for it. We have whole networks for it. We throw to Jim over in the weather office, and we don't know if we can trust Jim. Meteorologists are the only job that can be wrong as often as they are and still be considered trustworthy. How's that possible? How's that possible? You know, there's a group of people, they're called the World Meteorological Organization, and they have determined that they name different storms. And so when a tropical storm is arising, there's a 6-year rotation of names. They alternate male and female, and they work their way through so they know which storm they're referring to. Now, if a storm rises to the level that it becomes a bad one, then they cross that name off the list. Like, we already had Hurricane Claude, you know? And whoever those people are that decide the names, they're really messing up some relationships. There is someone somewhere who's dating a Melissa who needs to be real careful right now. Like, just really careful. Don't make eye contact when someone's talking about Hurricane Melissa. Don't look over. Just don't look over. You got to be conscious and careful. They name them. They prepare for them. They say to shelter in place. Storms are really interesting. Weather, I guess, is compelling. The science would say that the earth is struck by lightning 100 times per second, all year round. We see lightning as a very unique event, but every second, 100 strikes of lightning are hitting the earth. Some storm clouds can hold up to 1 billion pounds of water in them over your head. The thought of the sky falling is a little different when you think of that, isn't it? 1 billion pounds of water making their way down from the sky. We may or may not like the feeling of rain, but we love the smell after the rain, don't we? Because it actually cleans the air. There's a cleanness to the air. Pollutants are taken out of the air, and it's not the only smell that relates to rain. There's also that smell when the first drop hits the earth. There's a name for it. It's called petrichor. When the raindrop hits the earth, it releases some dust with a certain type of bacteria that pops like a bubble, and we all can smell it, and we're so sensitive to it. They say we're sensitive up to 5, it's a little technical, 5 parts per trillion, which would be the equivalent of 1 drop in an Olympic-sized pool. That's how small of a particle that we sense with our nose when that raindrop hits the ground, and we go, oh wow, I love that smell. Oh wow, something fresh is on the horizon. Oh, it's going to rain. And we're more sensitive to that than a shark is sensitive to the scent of blood. You know, here, oh, there's blood in the water. A shark can sense 1 part per 10 billion, meaning that we are 10,000 times more sensitive to the smell of a drop of rain than a shark is to the smell of blood in the water. We're keenly aware that the weather is changing. And we're also aware that the weather is somehow more powerful than us. Someone who just hasn't lived long enough to see that the weather can be refreshing, but it also can bring devastation. Do you know what the percentage of precipitation means? Percentage of precipitation is the the chance that it will rain multiplied by the area. Meaning that it means one of two things and every possible mathematical equation in between. In a city like Vancouver, if there's a 40% chance of rain, it means that there is either a 40% chance that 100% of the landmass will be hit with rain, or there's a 100% chance that 40% of the landmass will be hit with rain, or any mathematical equation between those two. Meaning it's a guess. At what level do you believe it's going to rain when you see the app? 10%? How many people at 10%? You're like, it's probably raining tomorrow. This is just a test of pessimism. 20%? 30. How many people at 30 are like, yeah, it's probably going to be rainy? 40? Okay, 40. Oh, we get tipping point. Okay, 50? 60? 70? 80? 90? 100. There's some super positive people. Not unless, and then there's a bunch of you that either just don't believe in weather or you don't want to participate, and I will take it as one of those two. But let's say this, that there is a weather warning in effect. There's a weather warning in effect. One of the most popular stories of a storm in the Bible is a story of a man named Jonah. Even if you haven't spent time studying the Bible, you may have heard of the story of Jonah because it crosses over into pop culture. It crosses over into society. It's maybe presented as a mythological story or a fable like Aesop told, the story of a man who found himself in a storm and went into the water and was swallowed by a fish. This story is factual. It comes from Scripture, and there's something for us to learn. In fact, I'm going to read this story, and then I'm going to ask us together collectively 5 questions that we need to learn from the storm that Jonah goes through. 5 questions, and the answer to one or two of them will determine how you read the other ones. It could be that for some, these questions are not super applicable to the specific storm you're in right now, but they will be at some point. And regardless of the type of storm you're in, there is something that can be learned when we look at the story of Jonah. Jonah chapter 1, verse 1. We're going to go down to verse 17. We'll read the whole story together, and then we will draw some conclusions or ask some questions at the very least. It says this, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord, and he headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port, and after paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. Then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. I just think it's kind of funny. The ship sent them a text saying, we need to talk. That is a breakup joke, okay? Threatening to break up. It says this, but Jonah... verse 4, then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea. Such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up, and all the sailors were afraid. Each one cried out to their own God, and they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. But Jonah had gone below deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. The captain went to him and said, how can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish. Then the sailors said to each other, come, let us cast lots and find out who's responsible for this calamity. They cast the lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. And so they asked, tell us who's responsible for making all of this trouble for us. What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country, and from what people are you? He answered, I'm a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. This terrified them, and they were asked, then they asked, what have you done? They knew he was running away from the Lord because he had already told them so. The sea was getting rougher and rougher, and so they asked him, what should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us? Pick me up and throw me into the sea, he replied, and it will become calm. I know that it's my fault that this great storm has come upon you. Instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to the Lord, please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man. For you, Lord, have done as you pleased. Then they took Jonah, they threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord, and they made vows to him. And the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of that fish for 3 days and 3 nights. What a story. First chapter of the story. If you read on, there are other applications that could be made about Jonah's life, but let's look specifically at this part of his story that pertains to a storm. Jonah's called from what would be present-day Israel to go to the capital of Persia, which would have been present-day in between Iraq and Iran. It's 550 miles or so to the east. And in his defiance to the purpose of God and the call of God, he went to the coastline and bought a ticket by sea to a place called Tarshish, which was believed to be the end of the earth in the other direction. So if you like geography, he bought a ticket to a place that was on the other side of the Rock of Gibraltar in Spain. He was called to walk 550 miles east, and instead he sailed as far as he could sail to the west. When I'm in a storm, and when you are too, I believe the first question that we ought to ask is, which way am I going? Which way am I going? Directionally and methodologically, which way am I going? Am I going the way God called me and the way he called me to get there, or am I going my own way? Am I trying to get to his destination with my own devices? Am I trying to follow his devices and plans, but I'm walking in the wrong direction? Which way am I going? Jonah followed his impulse, and his impulse lied to him. His impulse may have been brave, but it was wrong. I'm going to go where no man has gone before. We're going to sail the seas. We're going to go to the ends of the earth. It may have looked brave, but it was wrong. His impulse cost him something, but it was wrong. It says he paid a fare. For many of us, we are invested in going the wrong way, and because it's cost us something, we're like, I'm so committed now. I'm really committed to this relationship now. I know it's leading me the wrong way, but I'm really in it. I'm really committed to this lifestyle now. I know it would cost me something to change, but it's cost me a lot to get here, and I'm already on my way, and I guess I'll just keep going. I know that this is now the way that people perceive me. It's who I'm believed to be. It would be too awkward to change now. I'm already headed in my direction. But his impulse was lying to him. I need to ask myself the question, which way am I going? Because it answers the question, is this storm my own doing? You see, for Jonah, he's trying to flee from God, and God in his kindness, not his wrath, sends a storm to stop him from going where he was never intended to be. Which way am I going? Now listen, not all of us have a clear, defined picture of the longitude and latitude that we should end up in. Jonah did. He knew where he was supposed to go, how he was supposed to get there, what he was supposed to do when he got there. Not all of us have that clarity, and yet, in a general sense, we do have the instructions that Scripture provides, the type of person God is developing us to be, and our impulse at times leads us the opposite of where we know we're being called. The type of character that God is calling us to, the type of lifestyle he's calling us to, the type of work that he's developing within us. He's saying, I want you to go east, and we're like, awesome, as far west as possible it is. I'm going the other way. I need to at least pause. I don't want to make quick assumptions and go, I'm never the cause of a storm. I also need to make pause, and I don't want to make quick assumptions that I am the cause of every storm. I'm not always the main character. I'm sometimes an NPC, right? Like these sailors, that was not their doing. They're trying to figure out why the storm's coming. It had nothing to do with them, because our life sometimes interacts negatively and positively with the people around us. But I do need to ask myself the question, which way am I going? The second question I need to ask when I find myself in a storm is, what do I believe? You see, storms have an incredible way of bringing to the surface what our worldview is. Storms have an incredible way of exposing what we truly believe. Even if it's a storm of our own doing, the storm reveals to us what we believe to be true about the way we interact with the world around us and God. Even if the storm is not of our doing, it brings that worldview to the surface. That's what it did for every one of the sailors. It says they were filled with fear, and they began to cry out to their gods. They immediately leaned into their belief system. And when things get hard, that is when we come to crises of belief where we go, who am I? What do I really believe? It's why every storm can be useful in exposing to us what we really believe to be true. If God is for me, then who can be against me? And therefore I will not fear, though the earth give way, and though the mountains fall into the sea. If that's what we really believe, a storm does not intimidate us away from our faith. But if what we believe to be true about God is that he kind of, got the world spinning in motion and backed away slowly, and it's on us now, storms can be really panic-inducing. If we think by nature God's probably angry, he's probably dismissive, he's probably uninterested, he's probably just kind of, capricious with his will. He does what he wants to do when he wants to do it. Doesn't really concern himself with how we're doing. The storm that we walk through exposes that and brings it to the surface. Wednesday night in Bologna, we finished this Bible study, and so we went for pizza as we should. You'd be really disappointed in me if we did anything else, right? I'm like, man, we had some great fish and chips. You'd be like, what? What are we doing? So we found a little pizza spot that was open and hung out with some of the team. And as we were getting ready to go, Christina and one of her friends were driving in one car with baby Zion. And Piero and I were going to drop off some people who needed rides. And so we had this girl that I mentioned, Mayara, from Brazil with us. And so we were like, yeah, you tell us which way to go and we'll go there. And so we're driving, we're talking about how it went. It was a great night. Fun, love, truth. Definitely, it was awesome. And I think it's going to be exciting. As I was leaving the next day, I said to Pierre, I'm like, hey, guess what? 5 more days, we get to do it again. That's the most exciting part. It's not a one-off event. We're building community together. And so we were driving. Pierre's driving his new car. He's all excited about his Skoda from Czech Republic. I was loving this new car. It's got the baby seat in the back. He's all excited. And we pulled up to a stoplight. We're talking about the day. And a city bus came and sideswiped us. Just one of those slow motion type of scrapes all the way down the side of his car, ripped the mirror off around the corner. And so we followed. The bus driver came out. There's only 2 people on the bus, a supervisor and the trainee who was learning how to drive the bus that day. She walked off the bus going, oh, it's my fault. Her supervisor behind her was like, we got out, we're sharing information. Some guy drove by, he's like, I saw it all. Do you guys need anything? And she goes, they don't need anything. It was my fault. Just one of those moments. And, as much as we're like, man, we're just enjoying the high of this moment, it is one of those like, why'd that have to, like the end of a day, And Piero keeps looking at his car, oh, my Skoda, They got back in the bus, we got back in the car, and from the back seat, Mayara goes, well, the devil's just making noise because he knows we're making a difference. What happened? A storm brought her belief system right to the very surface. The storm that's experienced just brings what we believe to the surface, and it does this for all of us. That's why we should never waste a storm. Can you turn to the person beside you and say, don't waste the storm you're in? Come on, don't waste the storm you're in. It exposes what we believe. In a storm, if you find yourself desperate and lonely, it exposes that you're not very aware how near God is. If in a storm you find yourself looking to figure out who to blame, it might expose an area of pride in our life where we're not circumspect first. We look outward. A storm will bring to the surface what we really believe. But it's not the last question we need to ask. The third question is this. Is the storm in me or am I in it? Is the storm in me or am I in it? Because in the middle of this storm, the captain is kind of panicked. The sailors are trying everything they know to try. They're all crying out to their gods. They're all trying to figure out what to do. And where's Jonah? Jonah's just sleeping. It's interesting because there's 2 different stories of someone sleeping in a storm. There's Jesus, who sleeps in a storm because he goes, I'm good. There's peace on the inside of me. Because there's peace on the inside of me, this storm does not define me. I'm going to take a nap. And then there's Jonah, who I have to assume just understands. He goes, you think this is bad? You have no idea what's going on inside of my life right now. I'm running from God. I'm not surprised by these waves. And then part of me is not even bothered by them because maybe we'll just die. Like, as long as I don't have to walk 550 miles to Nineveh, death sounds fine to me. That's why I came to the end of the earth. He's got so much storm on the inside of him that the storm he's in, he's like, I'll just try to sleep it off. It's a bad type of sleep when you sleep in anxiety and angst, isn't it? It's an unfulfilling type of sleep. When you wake up, the reason he can sleep it out, he's like, honestly, no matter what I do right now, I'm going to wake up to the same storm anyway. I do need to ask myself, is the storm inside of me or am I in it? If I am in a storm, we will get through the other side. Whatever the cause may be, myself, someone else. However, if I can be at peace with God, I'm going to get through the storm. And if the storm is on the inside, then the weather could change and Jonah would have still been in disobedience. It's a question we need to ask ourselves. Is the storm inside of me or am I in it? The storm inside of him was so profound that he's just kind of trying to sleep it off and get through it. So the captain comes down. He's like, dude, we're all out here doing everything we can, which includes leaning in to our faith. What are you doing? Like, what faith are you living in? What faith are you exposing? Because faith requires action. Their action was this. We're going to try rowing. We're going to throw things overboard. We're definitely calling out to whatever, higher power, worldview we believe in. We're trying to figure this thing out. And here's Jonah sleeping. So he comes aboard the deck, and they're all working. And he's kind of like, hey, it's me. Hi. I'm the problem. It's me. They draw straws, the short straw indicating, not me, not me, not me, not me. Jonah's like, I already told you guys. It says he had already told them he was running from God. But then listen to the flurry of questions that they throw at him. They asked him, tell us who's responsible for making this happen. What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you? What must we do to make the sea stop? What's happening? They are presenting an opportunity for Jonah to do what he did, which is what? He's a prophet. He hears the voice of God and he tells people what God's saying. See, the fourth question that every storm should require us to ask is this: is there an opportunity in this storm? Even if it's a storm of my cause, is there an opportunity that helps the message of the gospel in this storm? Even if it's not my fault, is there an opportunity? Am I going to be grumpy, crossing my arms and going, I'm just going to get through the end of the storm, it's not my fault? Or am I going to seize the opportunity that is presented to me? He has a captive audience of people going, tell us everything. Who are you? Who's your God? Why do we exist? How could this change? Give us the whole story. Isn't it true that storms often present to us the opportunity to explain what we believe to be true? It's to have hope in hopeless times. It's to have courage when we could be discouraged. It's to be honest when we need to be honest. Is the storm providing me with an opportunity? And lastly, this question here: what do I need to surrender? Now for Jonah, because the answer to the first question of which way am I going was disobeying with my whole life, what he needed to surrender was his whole life. It may be for you and I that the way we're going, we're like, man, the storm is partially caused because I'm unwilling to be honest and vulnerable. So what do we need to surrender? Honest vulnerability. For some of it, man, the reason that this storm has come is because of an inconsistency in my character. I've caused some of this. I've put myself in this situation. So what do we need to surrender? The inconsistency in our character, and invite some accountability. If we got a temper issue, and our temper, like a tempest, has us in the middle of a storm, we need to surrender our impulsiveness if we're going to get through the other side of the storm. For Jonah, he goes, man, honestly, it's my whole life. I'm going the wrong way. The only way to resolve this is for me to surrender my life, and then the calm will come. Now, we could preach another message and probably have and may again one day in the future. I think there could be a little part of Jonah not yet willing to surrender. He's like, honestly, even the sea and the storm sounds better than going to a place I don't want to go. And so God, in his kindness, provides a whale to swallow him up and barf him back on the shore. How good is God? But what he needed to surrender was his whole life. See, as you go through this troubleshooting process of asking some questions in the weather warning that is in effect, which way am I going? If that way is not fully aligned with the purposes of God, then it could be that in God's kindness, he's sending a storm, not as a punitive form of discipline or judgment, but as a course corrector so that we don't go to where we were never intended to be. If as we process this, we find ourselves saying, it's exposed in me a lack of belief and solid worldview, if it's exposed within us that the storm on the inside is maybe somehow more tumultuous than the storm we're in, if it's exposed to us some opportunities we can take, then what do we need to surrender? Jonah goes, there's only one way to solve this. I need to get out of the boat that we're in right now because I need to respond to God. Interestingly, he had evangelized effectively enough that after they threw him overboard and everything grew calm, all of the sailors knew which God to surrender to and which God to make vows to. It's kind of an interesting thought with evangelism. Sometimes I think we try to keep too close of track. I don't know if my life even made a difference in that situation. Just leave it with the Lord. You might have floated off. You might be in the belly of a whale somewhere, and God's still working on the lives of people that you affected while you were in the middle of the storm. You just got to leave that with God. But there is a course correction that happens. I believe they went on to Tarshish. Why wouldn't they? That's where the boat was going. It wasn't wrong for them to be going there. And even in Jonah's brokenness, God used him. And even in his disobedience, God used him to bring reformation to the lives of these sailors who had no other possible way of knowing the living God who has power over the sea and dry land. Their lives are changed because of it. I believe that there is life change on the other side of surrender. Certainly our life is changed. But quite often, there's an effect in the lives of others as we surrender to the Lord as well. So one more time, if we could go through those questions. Which way am I going? What do I believe? Is the storm in me or am I in it? Is there an opportunity in this storm? What do I need to surrender?